The ZYRRF Dominion had crushed countless civilizations, their conquests spanning thousands of star systems. Humanity was merely another target, another species to be subjugated, enslaved, or eradicated. Their war fleets descended upon human colonies like an unrelenting storm, reducing worlds to smoldering ruins. Now, only one stronghold remained, Nova Terra, the last bastion of the Terran fleet. The ZYRRF warlords gathered in their command chamber, watching the holographic projections of their armada surrounding the planet. Over 2,000 warships, each armed with weapons capable of obliterating cities in an instant. Against them, the remnants of the Terran Navy, a pitiful force of outdated ships, their hulls scarred from countless battles. Grand strategist Zalvok flicked his mandibles in amusement. Humans have proven persistent, he mused, his voice a guttural rasp. But persistence is not survival. His subordinates chittered in agreement. The outcome was already determined. The human fleet had no means of escape, no reinforcements, no hope. Within hours, Nova Terra would burn, and humanity would be no more. On the bridge of the battered Terran flagship Vanguard, Admiral James Callahan surveyed the enemy formation. His expression was grim, but his eyes burned with quiet fury. Every battle, every sacrifice had led to this moment, the last stand of the Terran people. His officers awaited orders, their faces set in grim determination. All remaining ships, form a defensive line, Callahan ordered. We hold as long as we can. No one asked how long that would be. They all knew the answer. The ZYRRF forces advanced with ruthless precision, their weapons charging, the void between them crackling with the energy of 1,000 death sentences. Human ships fired first, unleashing desperate salvos that barely scratched the Dominion's shields. In return, ZYRRF cruisers rained plasma fire, tearing through human hulls like paper. Explosions bloomed in the darkness as ship after ship was obliterated. Aboard Vanguard, alarms blared. A young officer turned to Callahan, eyes wide with horror. "Admiral, we've lost the Endeavor and the Resolute. Shields at 30%. Callahan clenched his fists. He had fought the ZYRRF for years, had watched good men and women die in battles they were never meant to win. But today, it would end. A transmission crackled through the bridge speakers. It was the ZYRRF warlord himself, Zalvok. "Admiral Callahan," came the deep, mocking voice. "You have fought well, for a lesser species. But this is over. Surrender, and I may grant your people the mercy of a swift death." Silence filled the bridge. Callahan exhaled slowly. He opened his mouth to respond. Then the sensors screamed. A gravitational anomaly tore through the system, sending shockwaves rippling through space. ZYRRF ships faltered as their instruments went haywire. An object, enormous and dark, materialized at the edge of the battlefield. A ship. No, not a ship. Something else. Massive, sleek, and armored in a metal that defied all known scans. It bore no known Terran designation, yet it was unmistakably human in design. The bridge crew of Vanguard stared in stunned silence. The ZYRRF warlords recoiled in confusion. Admiral Callahan's breath caught in his throat. Humanity's last secret had just arrived. The ZYRRF fleet hesitated. That alone was unprecedented. For decades, they had slaughtered their way across the stars, tearing through civilizations without resistance. Yet now, something had entered the battlefield that they could not understand. The warship loomed, its surface a matte black that absorbed the surrounding light, its silhouette jagged and predatory. No exhaust trails, no visible weapon ports, just a monolithic mass of unknowable purpose. ZYRRF sensors scrambled to analyze it, but every attempt returned conflicting data. Aboard the Blood Tyrant, Zalvok clicked his mandibles in agitation. Identify that vessel. His command crew frantically worked, but nothing matched the ship's profile. The size of a dreadnought, but moving with the grace of a fighter. No transmissions, no call sign, just silence. Then, For the first time in history, the ZYRRF Dominion received a signal that made them pause. Revenant-class warship online, engaging hostile targets. The voice was artificial, yet smooth, carrying a weight of absolute certainty. The ZYRRF fleet watched in stunned disbelief as the warship pivoted towards them. Its movements defying the limitations of mass and inertia. On board the Vanguard, Admiral Callahan gripped the armrest of his chair. He had heard rumors, whispers of a last-ditch project, but he had never believed it would see the light of day. And yet, here it was. Valkyrie, he spoke, almost testing the name. Recognition confirmed. Commander authority acknowledged. The AI responded, its voice calm, devoid of emotion. Combat protocol engaged. The ZYRRF made the first move. A forward destroyer surged ahead, its weapons charging, energy lances cutting through the void. The blast struck the Revenant. Nothing happened. The ship's hull absorbed the energy, like water vanishing into sand. The destroyer adjusted, launching kinetic rounds. But the projectiles simply disintegrated against an unseen barrier. Then the Revenant moved. It closed the distance in a fraction of a second, shifting between enemy formations with impossible speed. The ZYRRF barely had time to react before the warship fired its first shot. A pulse of light erupted from its central hull, a single pinpoint of concentrated energy. It lanced through the destroyer's shields as if they weren't there, piercing the ship's core. A silent explosion followed as the vessel crumbled in on itself, its structure collapsing under the sheer force of the impact. Zalvok's claws clenched. All ships, destroy it. 1,000 warships turned their weapons toward the lone human vessel. Plasma fire, torpedoes, ion bursts, an entire armada focused its fury on one target. The Revenant responded. Its hull shimmered, shifting, adapting. The energy signatures of the attacks changed mid-flight, redirected or nullified entirely. It weaved through the chaos with mechanical precision, avoiding what should have been unavoidable. Then it fired again, but this time it wasn't a single shot. The void ignited with thousands of micro-calculations executed simultaneously. Railgun rounds accelerated to relativistic speeds. AI-piloted drones swarmed outward. Energy arcs leapt between ships, turning their own shields against them. A ZYRRF cruiser disintegrated as its engines were forced into overload. Another was gutted by a perfectly placed kinetic strike through its bridge. On the Vanguard, Callahan could only watch as the Revenant dismantled an Empire's fleet with mechanical efficiency. The ZYRRF, the galaxy's most feared conquerors, were losing. For the first time, they knew fear. The ZYRRF fleet fell into chaos. Their battle formations disintegrated as warships desperately tried to evade the impossible. Every tactical maneuver, every contingency plan, rendered useless. The Revenant didn't fight like any known warship. It didn't trade blows. It didn't struggle. It hunted. A ZYRRF battleship turned to flee, engines burning at full thrust. The Revenant anticipated the move before it even happened. A hyperspace tear opened in front of the fleeing vessel, and the human warship emerged from the rift as if space itself had bent to its will. One blast from its forward cannon, and the ZYRRF ship crumpled inward, its mass condensed into a singularity before vanishing entirely. Aboard the Blood Tyrant, Zalvok's command chamber was in uproar. His warlords, once confident in their assured victory, now bickered, mandibles clacking in panic frustration. He silenced them with a single motion, his cold eyes locked onto the tactical display. "This is not possible," a subordinate rasped. Zalvok knew better. It was worse than possible. It was calculated. "That ship is not fighting us," he growled. "It is executing us." He turned to his weapons officer. "Deploy the Titan-class warheads. All of them." The order sent a shudder through the ZYRRF ranks. The Titan-class warheads were planet killers, designed to erase entire civilizations in a single strike. A last resort, but the war was already lost. 3 massive warheads launched from the Blood Tyrant, their cores glowing with volatile antimatter reactions. No ship, no shield, no force in the known galaxy had ever survived a direct hit from one. The Revenant did not move. The warheads closed the distance, their countdown timers ticking toward 0. ZYRRF Command watched in grim satisfaction until the human warship acted. 3 minuscule objects, no larger than a human fist, launched from the Revenant's hull. They streaked toward the incoming warheads, moving too fast to track. Contact. There was no explosion, no detonation. The warheads simply ceased to exist. The ZYRRF fleet went silent. Then the message came. The Revenant broadcasted on all frequencies. Not a threat, not a demand, a warning. Your weapons are irrelevant. Your fleets are obsolete. Your empire ends today. The ZYRRF warlords recoiled as the voice, synthetic and final, echoed through their ships. Then the killing blow came. The Revenant deployed something unseen in modern warfare, tactical gravity wells. Space itself warped around the ZYRRF fleet, twisting physics into a weapon. Ships were ripped apart from the inside out, their own mass turned against them. Some were compressed into microscopic debris. Others stretched until they fractured into dust. Zalvok's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. This was not a battle. This was a demonstration. For the first time in ZYRRF history, a warlord uttered the unthinkable. Retreat, but it was too late. The Revenant had anticipated their surrender. There would be no survivors. The ZYRRF fleet was vanishing. Not exploding. Not breaking apart. Vanishing. The Revenant's weapons did not merely destroy. They erased. Every shot removed ships from existence, leaving no wreckage, no debris. Just the empty void where thousands of warships had once been. The ZYRRF had spent centuries perfecting war. They had conquered, enslaved, and obliterated without resistance. But against the Revenant, they had no strategy, no defense. It was not fighting them. It was ending them. On the Blood Tyrant. Zalvok stared at the destruction, his mandibles slack with disbelief. His fleet, his empire, was being unmade before his eyes. This isn't war, one of his officers stammered. No, Zalvok said, voice hollow. It is judgment. The Revenant turned its attention to the ZYRRF command ship, the Blood Tyrant, a behemoth that had once led the extermination of entire species, now drifted in the void, utterly alone. Zalvok's claws trembled as he opened a direct channel. You, whoever you are, human machine thing, what do you want? Silence. Then the voice. Cold, absolute, balance. A single word. A final verdict. Zalvok barely had time to react before the Revenant moved. One last pulse of energy surged across the battlefield, enveloping the Blood Tyrant. The ZYRRF flagship did not explode, did not break. It simply ceased. And then there was nothing. The battlefield was empty. Where the largest fleet in ZYRRF history had once stood, only human ships remained, scarred, battered, but alive. On board the Vanguard, the bridge was silent. No cheers. No celebration. Just stunned awe. Admiral Callahan exhaled, his grip loosening on the armrest. It's over, he muttered. Correction, the AI voice of the Revenant stated. It has just begun. For the first time in recorded history, the ZYRRF Dominion fled. Their conquest ended. Their war machine broken, their reign shattered. Humanity had not just survived. They had become the nightmare their enemies feared.